Alright, so let's do some installation for the Mac OS X. You want to make sure you have the latest software updates that are required. Sometimes security fixes and operating system updates can help your machine run better and more securely, especially when you're using web servers and database servers that can potentially give other people access to your computer, if not protected properly. You just want to go in and update your computer via the system preferences, as you can see, just from working with your dock down below. You can grab the software update and just take care of that. Now you will want to enable sharing. The personal web sharing selection will turn on and configure the built-in Apache web server that comes with Mac OS X. And you can start and stop it. If it's saying stop here, then you know you started it. You can browse with the local host. And you can also browse via the localhost and your username, as you can see here. I'll explain both methods here. It depends on what you want to do. Either way will work. We just need to make sure everything is set up correctly. You can click on these links as well to open the browser. So that's all you need to do. Start the server. Now from here we have a few things we need to download and install. PHP MyAdmin from phpmyadmin.net is going to allow us to work with MySQL. We'll see that in the MySQL section, but you want to download the latest version. Check out the site, phpmyadmin.net. This is an open source PHP administration tool for MySQL, and it is something we're going to use to work on our databases. Make sure you just read the site and download the latest one that is going to be secure, and then keep up with it. MySQL.com. This is where you're going to download the MySQL standard. This is 4.1.0. Again, download the latest stable. And then you're going to have Entropy, entropy.ch. If you go to php.net, you'll see if you click on the downloads for Mac OS X, then you're going to get directed to this site, and the person is kind enough to create the binaries here for PHP. This way you don't have to compile from the source. You can work with PHP 5.03 or 4.3.1 as I have here. You can have both installed, only one's going to work at a time. And this website, entropy.ch, gives a lot of documentation as well as a user form. So go there if you have any questions about this. It's pretty straightforward, but sometimes things don't work 100%. All right, so when we open these up, you can open them with Disk Image Mounter. You're going to see that we have Entropy down here, MySQL, and then using the Stuffit to decompress this, phpMyAdmin as a folder. And I'll show you what to do with that. All right, so after you know that your Apache server is installed, then you want to install MySQL. Very easy. Click on the package to run the installer package. Simple double click. And then if you want your MySQL to start when you start up your computer, which is a good idea, if MySQL auto starts with your system, then you don't have to manually start it every time you want to use it after rebooting your machine. Go ahead and double click and install that. From there, after that's successful, you want to install the PHP 5 or 4 or both packages. There's online documentation. I suggest you read that. It's not so difficult to read, pretty straightforward. You can just double click on it, install it. It's going to optimize your system, and then everything's going to be in place for you. Just takes a few minutes to do that. No need to restart or anything like that. All right, so we have that installed, PHP 5, MySQL, and we're ready to do PHP MyAdmin and the Learning PHP sample files, which is going to serve as a website that you can browse. If you do not have the files available with the CD-ROM or premium online training library subscription, then you can watch and learn the concepts by watching and listening to my instruction. All right, so there's two locations where we can put our files. In the library web server, you have a documents folder. This is the main Apache documents folder. Now what I did was I right-click and I duplicated that, so we have a copy of it here. We're making a copy of this folder just as a backup. It is a good developer habit to start your projects by backing up your folders. Again, this is just a backup copy of the default folder that was there before you started. Copies the folder. That way you can delete everything in here and then just open up your Learning PHP, copy everything from here, select all, and then do an edit, copy, or just drag it and copy it in order to get all of these files in there. You can use the shortcut keys as well and just get them in here, Documents folder up top. Secondarily, you want to bring this PHP MyAdmin folder here. Make sure you're doing a copy and not just a move. You don't want to move those files there. We're copying the PHP MyAdmin into this folder so we can access this tool from our web browser using our web server. Our web server actually points to these files and folders when we access the different links and folders from directly within the web browser. PHP MyAdmin is written in PHP and needs to be accessed via a web server. And then that's going to be all set up for you. That's the main local host that's not your user. We are setting up two folder structures here, one that points to your local host address and one for your specific username. Note that they're both using the same server, which is the local host. Secondarily, you can come in here, go to the users, Brian Max, the username. You can find your sites right here. And then you do the same thing here. If there's any files here, you want to delete them or move them. We are copying files to these special folders that are attached to the web server. Once they're in place, we can browse the websites from a web browser. If you browse to the websites here that I have below, you can see this is the local host with my computer name and the little tilde there, and you can browse things as you need to. That's all set up. The second one is going to be the local host, and then you can browse things again as you need to. You have to remember that your actual web server is just pointing to files that are on the hard drive of that particular server. This could be your local machine, but it is really just pointing to files on that machine. So when you access these pages in your web browser via links, for example, you're actually just going to those particular files and folders, navigating there, and your web browser is just interpreting those HTML files and actually rendering them in the browser. And then you can also browse to PHP MyAdmin, that little folder that's going to run this. And this is going to serve as the database administration for you. You do want to take note of the bottom notes in red. They're just configuration settings. I show you how to do that in the MySQL database section. And it's going to work across the Windows and where you have this PHP MyAdmin installed, and MySQL works across operating systems. This little configuration file, be sure to modify your configuration settings before you get started. I will talk more about this in the MySQL and our samples movie that you'll find in the database section. You can check it out inside BBEdit. Maybe you want to download BBEdit just as a trial if you don't have it. You can download BBEdit at bbedit.com or barebones.com. It is an easy-to-use text editor that is very popular and inexpensive. Look in a config file, config.inc.php, and that's in your library web server. And then you have a documents folder and then your PHP MyAdmin. It just isn't showing there. And then config.inc. This is that web server documents folder that we looked at a little while ago. Open this up. And then you'll see that if you do a search for absolute URL, this is the configuration. Pretty easy. It just wants you to put in that http:// and then the path to PHP MyAdmin that we saw in the browser. It wants you to copy and paste that into this. You can also disable that warning. It doesn't have to be set, but if it's not auto-detected, then you want to put that in there. And then when you refresh after you save that page, everything's going to be in place for you. And you can see this in the database section. That's all set up. And then you can browse this as you need to. That's all set up as well. And we'll just look at a couple other things here quickly. Now you may need to do php.ini configuration settings here. You can see the path directly there. User local PHP 5 or PHP 4 lib for library, and then php.ini. That's your php.ini file. You may need to change that to make some changes for PHP. Then the Apache configuration file, that's going to be located in private, etc httpd httpd.conf for httpd.configuration file. Try saying that 3 times fast. All right, so we have that. and you can open hidden in BB Edit, and that's going to allow you to navigate to that. Just start with your hard drive and navigate in to the different directory structure. This is going to allow you to open your hidden files, which you might not be able to see unless you go to the terminal. Now, there are a couple other things as well. Now, you might have to set some permissions. You might have a couple permission problems. If that happens, there's just two little files that you need to worry about. These two files here. We'll go back in BB Edit so it's more visible, and we'll just open them. And then you'll need to go to your terminal window in Applications, Utilities, and then Terminal. You can type those two lines in as is into the terminal one at a time. Hit Enter on the first one, copy and paste, and then the second one. These are the two different folder structures that I mentioned, and this is going to set up the proper permissions. If you have a 403 error that you can't access this page in the browser, forbidden, you want to change the settings here. You do have to be very careful when working from the terminal window because you can really have unlimited power to modify just about any file. So do be careful. You have to type in the files specifically as I have them here. You have to type in each line exactly and use one at a time. After the first line here, you'll have to enter the root password, the administrative password for your particular machine. And long story short, we're all set up. So you can see that it's not so difficult to get things started. Some things might come up in between, but I would recommend that you just check out the websites and check out the user forums at the particular websites, and they give you a lot of tips and tricks on how to get this rolling and working as you need to. Installing all of this can take some practice, and there are some advanced concepts here that I have discussed. It is a lot of information to digest and to explain, so take it slowly. And don't hesitate to watch these movies again when you did not catch something the first time. Every one of you will have potentially a different install issue that will need to be worked out. And installing and reinstalling these software packages will be good practice and a good way to actually become more familiar with these applications and learn how PHP works. My advice to you is to take installing all of these packages slowly. They can be difficult to reinstall or uninstall because they're open source projects that sort of demand that users have a familiarity with their operating system in great detail. What I have presented to you is a good overview to getting started so that you can work with the examples that I provide and to get started installing these packages on your own machines. There are no absolute simple ways to install all of these packages and not run into individual issues at some point. You will need to get into the documentation if you intend to work with these software packages outside of the training tutorials I provide. There is no way to avoid reading the documentation at some point.